pop4conservation.com. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where you want to go to support Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation fundraising efforts. Pop4conservation.com is where you can go to be a big winner. 80 winners, over $200,000 in prizes, vehicles, firearms, hunting and fishing packages. Again, 80 winners, over $200K in prizes. Pop4conservation.com, protecting our pursuits. Pop4conservation.com. Go there today to enter. Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week of September 30th, 2024. Lots to get into this week. But first, you heard the promo as you came into the show. Link will be in the show notes here, and I'll repeat this at the end. But do go over and check that Pop for Conservation raffle we've got going on. A bunch of winners, tons of thousands of dollars in prizes. Anyway, you heard the sound at the beginning. Check the show notes if you want a quick link. That's pop, P-O-P, the number 4, conservation.com, pop4conservation.com. All right, I said it. We have a lot to get into. So let's go around the country and check out the sporting and conservation news for this week. First off, our lead story: sportsmen and women recognized by the president and 43 governors as America's true conservationists during National Hunting and Fishing Day that was celebrated this past Saturday. CSF organizes conservation groups in opposition to Colorado Prop 127. CSF supported Fix Our Forest Act, passes the House on strong bipartisan vote. Fall turkey hunting regulation changes in the Great Plains. Trapping the truth. Sport dog community unites to oppose onerous county ordinance in South Carolina. CSF expresses concerns with the U.S. Forestry Service's National Old Growth Amendment. Finally, Angi Bruce named as director of the Wyoming Game Fish Department. I want to say Angi. All of that upcoming, but first let's get into it. Last Saturday was a great success as the headline reads, and apparently there's an update here as I read the story. 44, an all-time record, governors issued proclamations celebrating National Hunting and Fishing Day on Saturday, September 20th of 2024, as well as the White House, President Biden, also issuing similar proclamation recognizing the good work of the sporting community. This from our CSF President and CEO, Jeff Crane. For over 85 years, American sportsmen and women have been the backbone of conservation. The impact we make is nothing short of significant, and we will always answer the call to protect and promote America's outdoor heritage, our incredible fish and wildlife resources, and the habitats in which they live. National Hunting and Fishing Day is a well-deserved recognition of the immense conservation, economic, and cultural impacts sportsmen and women have to America. Goes on to talk about American system of conservation funding. That's what these proclamations do in each state. They highlight a lot of the totals that we contribute as a community in license sales and PR dollars, what we bring to the state. So again, nothing short of remarkable. National Hunting Fishing Day also brought together sportsmen and women from across America to celebrate the rich tradition of hunting, sports shooting, and fishing through organized local, state, and national events aimed at introducing new audiences to the outdoors. Johnny Morris's Wonder of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium in Springfield, Missouri, again served as the official home for National Hunting and Fishing Day, along with Bass Pro Shops across the country hosting National Hunting and Fishing Day events. I'd ask you, if you want more on that, you can go back to our feature episode last Thursday we sit down with the one and only Johnny Morris for a really cool conversation, highlighting National Hunting and Fishing Day, but more getting information and anecdotes and that firsthand accounting from the man himself. And you're going to learn some things. It's a great episode. So go back and check it out. That is the celebration of National Hunting and Fishing Day that's been going on since 1971, and then really formalized in 72. So we've been at this for a while. 44 states out of 50. That's pretty remarkable, and we thank those governors certainly for issuing and recognizing our community. All right, let's get back to Colorado. Last week's Roundup, we had Barry Snell on the program and kind of fleshed this out. He's reporting again on Prop 127. Get into some of the highlights, the stuff you guys don't know. Some context to 127, that it was the result of the Colorado legislature voting down Senate Bill 22031, which also aimed to restrict predator management, circumvent the authority of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and erode the North American model of wildlife conservation. CSF strongly opposed these efforts during the 2023 legislative session and are currently working with national and in-state partners to support the campaign against the ban. Scores of sporting conservation groups have publicly joined CSF in opposing Prop 127 on a letter to Colorado's voters designed to educate them on the facts of the issue and keep Colorado's wildlife management based on science and not on out-of-state funded emotion. Additionally, with the agency, as reported recently, and as recently as last week, the fight against Prop 127 on this election draws near. And with the statewide release of mail-in ballots being October 11th, there's no time to waste. This latest round of ballot box biology goes against all proven scientific wildlife management practices, as well as CSF's core mission. To that end, CSF is proud to announce the publication of a letter to Colorado's voters. This letter, which addresses the facts and corrects the record, was coordinated by CSF and has been enthusiastically joined by a coalition of dozens of state and national hunting and wildlife conservation organizations. This coalition letter sends a simple but powerful message to the Centennial State electorate. Keep wildlife management decisions in the hand of the state professionals, whose science-based strategies have made Colorado's now thriving wildlife population the envy of the world, and out of the hands of out-of-state animal rights activists who use emotion and propaganda to prey upon the public's unfamiliarity with the topic and manipulate voters. You can go to the online article here. There is a link to the coalition letter that Barry provides. We're asking that you please share this with everyone you know in Colorado and tell them to vote no on Prop 127. And again, as we discussed last week, again, you can go back and check out the roundup from last week. It's all about education. It's all about delivery and the messaging on this. It's not speaking to the choir, as it were. We're not talking to our own community. You go out and you talk to the 80% that we're always quoting. You go out to your neighbors, your grandma, your aunt, uncle, whoever that doesn't hunt, that doesn't understand how this works. And really, you got to talk to him like an elementary school kid. And that's, again, not an insult, but put it in digestible terms and relatable terms that these people can get with and understand, and do so gently, do so with grace. Check your emotions, because obviously we're all very passionate about this, whether you live in Colorado or not, and you appreciate how this whole system works. It's got to be communicated in the right positive way, highlighting the North American model, what that is, highlighting science-based management of wildlife, what that does for all the states. So thank you to Barry for that update. And again, do go to the EPUB. share that coalition letter. Again, there's a link there, congressionalsportsmen.org. Go to our media room and then get all the past and current articles for the Sportsman's Voice EPUB. Two articles this week from our director of forestry that you guys were introduced a little while ago, John Colclasure. This first one, CSF-supported Fix Our Forest Act passes the House on strong bipartisan support. Sportsmen and women depend on the healthy forest to provide access and quality wildlife habitat, and the Fix Our Forest Act, that's H.R. 8790, would enact policy reforms that will bolster active forest management to address the restoration needs of more than 117 million acres of fire-prone forests. The legislation is critical to reducing catastrophic catastrophic wildfire risk and increasing forest resiliency to support our outdoor sporting traditions of millions of sportsmen and women who depend on federal public lands for recreation access. Highlights here, Fix Our Forest Act is a top priority for CSF and others in the sporting conservation community and enable forest land managers to tackle the extensive backlog of forest and watershed restoration needs on public lands through science-based forest stewardship policy improvements. On September 24th, Fix Our Forest Act passed the House of Representatives on a strong bipartisan vote, 268 to 151, which demonstrates the need to overcome long-running misguided controversy over federal forest management to make real strides to restore forest and mitigate against wildfire risk with science-based sustainable forest management practices. So far, in 2024, more than 7 million acres of forest has been burned, negatively impacting communities, forests, and wildlife habitat. Again, recalling our conversation with John a few episodes back, we talk about this, and I'd invite you to go back, check that episode out. We get a little bit deep on that, and John does a real good job articulating the whys. Excuse me. More on this on June 9th. Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus co-chair Representative Bruce Westerman and Representative Scott Peters introduced the Fix Our Forest Act, which would enact several longstanding federal forest policy priorities in the sporting community. House Natural Resource Committee favorably reported the legislation to the House of Representatives as amended on June 26th. The act prioritizes active management to reduce wildfire risk, as we said, including the increasing acreage limitations on several existing categorical exclusions. H.R. 8790 would also establish an interagency office known as the Fireshed Center to promote data sharing and coordinate among agencies to streamline processes and comprehensively address wildfire threats to communities. Additionally, among other reforms, the legislation would clarify consultation requirements for the U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management following the 2015 Cottonwood Environmental Law Center versus U.S. Forest Service decision that has hindered forest management projects, strengthen the Good Neighbor Authority, reauthorize the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program, enact reforms to discourage litigation that hinders forest health improvement projects, and codify 20-year stewardship contract. Whew! Technical, but I think the gist of this here and the celebration of the bipartisan support here and moving this along and being able to responsibly and backed by science manage these stands, manage these unmanaged and fire-prone stands of forest, which I mean, look at the news in the last 10 years. I mean, it feels like every summer something's burning. And as John said, this year alone, 7 million already burned. Presumably that's here in the lower 48. But I mean, the last 2 summers, Canada's been on fire. And shoot, we've seen haze and smoke come all the way down to DC and beyond from those fires. So anyway, it's a problem that needs to be addressed, and Fix Our Forest Act certainly addresses that, and good to see it move along. Moving on. This from Jake Gould. There's some updates to the fall turkey hunting regulation in the Great Plains. Many states across the Great Plains are gearing up for the fall turkey hunts, with Iowa and Nebraska starting their fall archery turkey seasons on October 1. Each year, state fish and wildlife agencies review the turkey season dates and bag limits and decide if there are any changes needing to be made to the start of the dates, bag limits, or if the season needs to be canceled altogether. It's important to remember that decisions made to reduce bag limits, shorten season, or cancel seasons are being made by state fish and wildlife agencies, the entities best equipped to make fish and wildlife management decisions. While hunting regulations sometimes change year to year, it's important for hunters to study up on the regulations of the state they plan on hunting. That's your responsibility. Conservation officer you may run into is not going to appreciate, well, it was this last year. The onus is on you. Do study up before your season, or if you're a traveling hunter. Kind of goes without saying, but good reminder. Even hunters who hunt the same state year after year, Jake's making my point I just made, need to be aware of the changes. Back in 2023, Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks Commission made the decision to cancel the fall hunting season due to wild turkey population concerns. Kansas continued this into 2024 with fall turkey hunting season, which is a part of their plan, and to continue looking at population levels before they can confidently reestablish their fall turkey hunting season. Nebraska Game and Parks Commission has also made significant changes to their fall turkey bag limit that hunters need to be aware of. 2023, hunters in Nebraska were able to purchase 2 turkey tags, which allowed either sex to be taken. These regulations have now changed, allowing each hunter to only purchase 1 turkey permit, allowing for the harvest of only 1 turkey. These changes were done due to concerns of the declining turkey populations, which many states have seen over the last several years. The overall goal is to stabilize the turkey population and in turn rebuild the population. The Nebraska update here does not specify if it's an either sex tag or a gobbler only or bearded bird. So you definitely, if you're hunting Nebraska, do look that up because that's an important detail. As a turkey junkie, I have a lot to say on this one. I won't because we have so many articles and stuff to get to, but I guess I'll say this. And this is an editorial here and an opinion only, and take this for what you will. It's certainly in turkey circles controversial. There's a long-standing tradition in many states of fall turkey hunting. It's a great tradition. Matter of fact, that's how a lot of this started. Some states you're allowed to use dogs. It's really a fantastic tradition. However, in a lot of these opportunities, you're allowed to take either sex, which again, you do you kind of thing. If it's legal and the decision makers at the agencies are saying that's okay, it's okay. I would argue, as someone who's been doing this for a long time and specifically pays attention to turkey populations where I live and then throughout the country, maybe be a bit more judicious in what you decide to take. It's known and it's been stated through study that 20% of the hens on the landscape, the ones doing the recruiting in the spring, that actually successfully, that are bred and have clutches of eggs in their nest. That doesn't mean they all survive, right? I mean, I think the standard is, if 2% of those eggs make it, that's kind of the goal. So for 10 eggs, if they hatch all out, and hen's got a brood of 10, and if 2 make it to the fall, that's considered a success. So it's extremely hard to, you would think. I mean, a lot of people get to see turkeys everywhere, and sometimes that's exacerbated by bird seed and low hunting pressure, especially in urban environments and, HOAs and cul-de-sac neighborhoods. But it's not easy for these wild populations. And then, as Jake rightly points out, in states where this is on the decline, I would argue as well that most turkey hunters embrace this enthusiastically. Yeah, it's a bummer for the year or maybe a couple of years, but we want to see those populations rebound. Certainly, we're on the backside of the peak of the Airfinger quote golden days of turkey hunting. That's not to say it's a complete population crash. It's just more leveling out. Some states are being a little hit harder. So anyway, all that to say, this isn't doom and gloom. This is responsible wildlife management that if you're turkey hunting, you got to be aware of in all the states, especially. And as conservation-minded sportsmen and women, these adjustments year to year, if we're losing seasons, that's a cause for concern. Don't look at it as a loss of opportunity and access. Look at it as this is by design. This is why we don't legislate seasons. This is why we don't let ballot box biology, we try to not let it get to the voting place, because things are changing on the ground so fast and rapidly that our agencies need to respond in real time. If this stuff is gone to the legislature, holy smokes, it's just amongst all the other stuff these legislators are dealing with, it can get tied up, and then it's too late. I mean, you could have all these awful ramifications of the process, whereas if it was left up to the agencies, as it should, you can address it in real time, as these states are doing. So, again, takeaways here: the onus is on you as the hunter. Make sure you're checking your regs every year before you just go out, and embrace the change, because it's all for the good, and it's not to take away access. All right, moving on. Trapping the truth. This is my article. I think I've discussed here, I'm a passionate trapper, and basically wrote this article to highlight the importance of trappers, the modern day trapper that is highly scrutinized. It's the most scrutinized practice in the sporting community. There's a ton of regulation on it. There are best management practices that are adopted at state agency level, at the trap manufacturer level. These folks that are, not to promote any, but it's coming off the top of my head, Victor, Duke, some of these long-standing companies have adopted and said, we want to make sure our equipment is the most up-to-date, science-driven, technology-driven piece of equipment we can put out on the landscape, so that if I am out there targeting coyotes and I'm in a state where bobcats are not allowed to be taken, that equipment is simply a restraining device, shouldn't cause any harm. And I can release that cat back into the wild, a little inconvenienced. A lot of trappers are on a schedule of when they have to check their traps. Here in New Hampshire, it's every 24 hours. Under ice sets, especially for beaver, those are 72 hours. But anyway, it's an article of passion here. A lot of good information. I'd invite you to check it out. And one of my bigger points here is encouraging our legislators, especially those in the Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus. A lot of people just aren't up to date or have any working knowledge of what trappers do, what they bring to the state agencies as far as data collection, biological data collection, boots on the ground, reporting what they're seeing. So I would invite you, and I would challenge you, if this is something that you're constantly seeing opposition to every legislative session, where deep-pocketed trapping, anti-hunting groups, animal rights extremist groups are banging on your door, are ringing your phone, or emailing you nonstop about getting something outlawed. Go out and see it in real time. Don't just take propaganda from the backside, and do your homework. I mean, I'm reporting this stuff as I know it, with facts, and with some good links here that back up what I'm saying. But there's a good opportunity to go out, and the modern trapper will gladly show you what they're doing, how the equipment works, the strategies, how the traps, the sizes of the traps, the restraining pressure of these traps. Some of these traps, if you're trapping for a smaller species, say a mink trap, it's a very small restraining device that if a coyote or a deer, not that a deer would step in a mink trap, but maybe a raccoon, and so that makes more sense in this example. The raccoon wouldn't be able to pull his paw out. So it's all, these things are really dialed in. Anyway, I reference here episode 29 of this podcast here. We had Governor Sununu on, who's the chair of our Governor Sportsmen's Caucus. Governor Sununu addressed this. This is pretty cool to hear a governor talk about and acknowledge the importance of the trapping community on the landscape. Information they provide, the services they provide, the fact that there is a lot of bad information and propaganda out there. He acknowledges, we'll listen to people, but ultimately we're going to fall back on our professionals at the state agency who need and prescribe for this practice of trapping and quite frankly have used and employed trapping to service non-game species, to service endangered species, to trap and transfer species. I got a lot to say on this one too. And anyway, go check it out. I enjoyed writing the article. I think you'll find it informative. Some good links in here to best management practices that are put out by AFWA, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, the scrutinization here. And I'm certainly highlighting the top 3 New England states here where I live, in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And you can go right to those state agencies' websites from the article and check out their trapping seasons, rules, regulations, et al. And hey, go out on the trap line, check it out. Sporting dog community unites to oppose onerous county ordinance in South Carolina. Connor Barker reports on September 23rd, Fairfield County Council voted on a county ordinance that would have required all hunting dog owners to pay a $50 fee to register their hunting dogs with the county. The same requirement was proposed for dogs that participated in shows and or competition. In addition, the proposed ordinance would permit the county to inspect, quote, commercial breeding kennels, end quote, to ensure that breeders maintain standards and procedures promulgated by the well-known anti-hunting organization, Humane Society of the United States. Other requirements in the ordinance included kennel restrictions and spay-neuter requirements with poorly defined exemptions and language that could classify a person that sells a single litter of puppies or charges a stud fee as a, quote, commercial breeding kennel. Following unified opposition from the sporting community, the Fairfield County Council voted unanimously to send the ordinance back to the committee where it can be amended. Folks, this is copy-paste tactic from that specific group that Connor mentions. It's in the articles. I said it once. I'm certainly not giving them any more time of day. You can go check out, forgive me. It's a nonprofit letter grade organization that it's more of a watchdog group that can tell you, a nonprofit that is mission delivery, the money they raise, where it's going. And that particular organization scores very low. And a lot of the money does not go to what they perpetrate, their mission. They deeply fund these anti-hunting, anti-trapping, anti-sporting community campaigns. And like I said, this is literally copy and paste. The language, the goals here have been done in many states. We dealt with this in New England. We dealt with this in Massachusetts. We dealt with this in New Hampshire recently. So this is nothing new. It's been covered. But in this specific county, it was introduced and obviously sent back for amendments. So sometimes these things can be really, really in the weeds, and really, if you're not a dog, if you don't utilize dogs for hunting, you're not part of that community within our community. It's worth reading up on and understanding, and certainly, without a doubt, supporting those that utilize canine in their pursuits, because we need to support each other, even if we're not doing it or never have plans to have a sporting dog. But we all need to support each other. And here's a good example of that, people coming together and pushing back. Last two articles here, friends. We're getting to it. I appreciate y'all hanging in here. I know we're running along, but a lot to report on. CSF expresses concerns with the U.S. Forest Service's National Old Growth Amendment. This again from John Colclaser, our Director of Forestry Management. Why this matters: attempting to amend 121 National Forest Land Management Plans to provide consistent direction for the management of old growth forests as alternative to the preferred alternative proposed is a misplaced policy priority and distraction from the need to address declining fish and wildlife habitat and forest health across the national forest system. At the time when the U.S. Forest Service is facing significant budget challenges and is unable to treat the tens of millions of acres in need of management to reduce catastrophic wildfire risk, moving forward with any of the alternatives besides the no action alternative will further divert limited agency resources away from restoring the health of forests and watersheds. Some highlights here. U.S. Forest Service's mature and old growth forest analysis of threats to lands managed by the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management threat assessment, which was required by Executive Order 14072, identified wildfire, insects, and disease as the leading threats to old growth forests, not timber management. The mature and old growth forests definition identification and initial inventory on lands managed by the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management, that is a heck of a title, identified 68.1 million acres of mature forests and 24.7 million acres of old forests, combined with the more than half of the national forest system that is already in no or limited management areas. The national forest system will continue to trend towards predominantly older age class distribution without amending forest plans as proposed in the draft environmental impact statement. The threat assessment reported a 10% decline in mature forests and reserve areas, wilderness areas, inventory, roadless areas, and national monuments. Whereas outside of the reserved areas, i.e. where timber management takes place, old growth forests increased by 7.8%, demonstrating that hands-off management approach is not always the answer. CSF submitted comment to U.S. Forest Service draft environmental impact statement for amendments to land management plans to address old growth forests across the national forest system. CSF previously submitted comments in August of 22 with others in the sporting conservation community in response to the U.S. Forest Services and Bureau of Land Management efforts to define and inventory old growth and mature forests following President Biden's issuance of Executive Order 14072, strengthening the nation's forest communities and local economy. CSF recommended that the U.S. Forest Service adopt Alternative 1, the no action alternative. CSF expressed concerns about further straining the U.S. Forest Service limited staff and funding resources, prioritization of managing for old growth forests over other habitat needs, specifically the need to manage for diversity of forest age class to support diverse and robust wildlife populations, and the U.S. Forest Service's continued failure to meet early successional habitat goals laid out in the forest. U.S. CSF also expressed concerns about inviting litigation on approved habitat improvement projects waiting to be implemented in consistency with the 2012 planning rule, local collaborative input intent, and undermining stakeholder trust and investment in recently revised forest plans. Instead of undertaking the enormous task to amend 121 land management plans in a short time frame, CSF encourages the U.S. Forest Service to invest in wildfire prevention efforts and provide restoration work to increase forest resiliency. CSF is a strong proponent of using active forest management tools to improve wildlife habitat and access for sportsmen and women, and will continue to advocate for policies that support management flexibility on federal public lands. Ton of information in that article, lots of link tos here. You can read up on some of these orders and plans and comments. So again, go there and check out John's article to learn more and do more homework. Finally, Angi Bruce named as director of the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. This from Marie Newmiller. Director Brian Nesvik recently retired after 30 years of service with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Angi Bruce was named the director of the agency by Governor Sportsman's Caucus member Governor Mark Gordon. She is the first female to serve in this top role at the department. Throughout her tenure as deputy director, Angi Bruce has become responsive to the sportsman's community, and with participation in events like our annual NASS Summit coming up next month in November, and the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation would like to congratulate Director Bruce for her appointment and looks forward to continuing work with Director Bruce in her new capacity. Marie's article goes on to talk about some past work here and looking forward to the future. Last note here, Director Bruce's reach has gone beyond the state of Wyoming through her participation in regional and national events. During last year's NASS Summit in Dewey Beach, Delaware, Director Bruce joined a panel of state fish and game agency directors for a presentation on legislators and nonprofits representing the Western states. The Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation looks forward to continued work with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department under the leadership of Director Bruce to promote conservation, sporting heritage in Wyoming. There it is. That's this week's show. Thanks for hanging in here. Pretty long one, but lots to report on. Again, go to congressionalsportsman.org. You can check out past articles, current articles for this week. Lots of great resources available to you to, again, do your own homework. Final word on the raffle. Again, popforconservation.com, popforconservation.com, POP, the number 4, conservation.com. Thanks for tuning in. No feature this week. So again, go back and check out the Johnny Morris episode celebrating National Hunting and Fishing Day. It's a great one. Really enjoyed it. And our president and CEO, Jeff Crane, also on there. And he and I do a little debrief after talking about CSF role in National Hunting and Fishing Day and our ability to work through our state caucuses, to work with our governor's offices to secure a record-breaking 44 proclamations this year alone. Next week, on our feature presentation on October 10th, we're going to bring to you Congressman Moore, NSSF Larry Neal, and Brandon Maddox, again from Silencer Central. We're talking about the tax stamp legislation and what that does for conservation. We got this sound while we were in town for the banquet, and we're going to bring that to you. And then there's a part 1. Part 2 is going to come out the next day, special Friday release, where we're talking wildlife corridors with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, Corey Mason of the Wild Sheep Foundation, and Ryan Bronson of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. 2 great shows coming your way with some very influential personalities and lawmakers. Appreciate you tuning in for that. Thanks for hanging with us on this long one. Have a great week. Be safe out there in the field. I think everybody's in some sort of season at this point right now. As always, CSF is your connection to outdoor legislation. Thanks for hanging with us. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.